So as I mentioned, today is all about the CI-203. It's going to help, this training hopefully will help you get more acquainted with this instrument. We'll talk a little bit about, what kind of people use the 203. I will discuss a little bit of the theory of operation. I'll show you all the components you will receive when you actually purchase a device, show you how to get started with the instrument, show you a couple examples of it actually working, and then as well as go through all the menu structures and show you exactly what each menu item does. And then we'll talk about the data. I'll actually put some data on the screen share some data with you and show you what that data output looks like. Then we'll talk about just general support, troubleshooting, updating the instrument, stuff like that, and where to get it, where to go for it. And at the end, we'll end with a Q&A session. So for now, I'm going to stop sharing and actually utilize my video for most of this training. So the first thing, when you open up the case that your 203 comes in, the first thing you're going to notice is that you get an actual instrument. And so this is the CI-203 instrument. In addition to that, we'll come back to that, don't worry, that's the most important part. In addition to that, you'll have a manual. So you'll get a manual, operation manual printed. These are also available online. You'll get a USB cable that plugs into the instrument. This will be used for data transfer. You also will get a USB charging cable. So this actually charges via USB as well. It does have a current US adapter, although what we do when we ship out instruments to other countries is we include the relevant adapter for your country so you can easily plug in right away. We also have a lens cleaning cloth. This is actually going to come in handy and is fairly important. And then additionally, we have, just for convenience, a carrying strap. So you'll be able to hook this to the device if you want to carry it out in the field. As this is, on all intents and purposes, this is intended to be a field device. It's a very convenient device. And so let's talk about the anatomy of this actual instrument. And so you'll notice off the bat, we have our left hand, we'll have our display here. We have our keys to control the display, power button, left, right, up and down arrows. We have an enter key. We have a save key and a stop key here. So those are the main keys that you're going to use to manipulate what's on the actual display here. At the ends of the instrument, we have these rubber caps. And so on the side that has the actual scan head, if we take that off and we look that cap off when we look at it, there's a kind of adapter plug here. This is actually for our conveyor attachment accessory. And so with that, I will describe that later on. This essentially can act as a high throughput destructive leaf area measurement device. And so this allows you to connect to that, that conveyor attachment. On the display end of the instrument, if I open up that cap, here's where we'll see, if I get a light there a little bit, you'll see the actual plug for the USB. And then right here is a SD card. And so the device is off right now, so I'm safe to eject that. I'll just show you. There's an SD card here for storage. So there's two different methods that we have for transferring data. So we can either eject that SD card and plug that into our computer, or we can connect with that USB cable on the USB port that is right there. So I'll put that rubber cap back on. On the back side of the instrument, there's some important information. You'll see there are, this is a demo unit that's not for resale, but on yours, you will have a serial number on the back, which is important information that we will be asking for if you ever are in need of support for your instrument. Now, the actual theory of operation, how this thing is actually going to measure your leaf area. So right here, there's a lever. You can see on the top, there's a screw here that connects this top arm, which acts as a kind of a lever here. And so underneath this, let me get this a little bit closer. What you'll notice is there are two different components to this device. There's a roller. You can see that roller in there right here. And then right on the very front edge here, there is a, that is where the actual laser is going to be measuring. And so there's two measurements that this is actually taking, and then the rest are going to be calculated from those two measurements. So what it's doing is there's a laser that is measuring, it's on a rotating mirror, and it's measuring the width. And that's what's happening in that clear front scan part right here. It's measuring the width of your leaf. The roller here is what's measuring your length. So that's when you're measuring your leaf, it's measuring the length there. And while it's measuring that length, it's also measuring the width at around 500 measurements a second. That's how fast it can go and measure. So it's measuring with a lot of accuracy, and so it always knows what the exact width of that leaf is as you're pulling it through the roller. And so essentially how this was designed to be used is as a non-destructive tool in the field. So imagine here's a leaf. Imagine my arm is the actual tree of this plant. So this is held stationary. And so the intent was to be able to come in with this, you lift up the arm, you put the leaf in the arm, and then you pull this, the actual instrument, away, and it rolls, and that rolls the leaf through, and it measures all the parameters. While I'm doing that, there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. You know, the leaf, if it's very soft and I guess culpable to breaking, you're going to need to actually put a plastic covering over it or something like that to kind of protect it so it doesn't break in there. If it's too frail and brittle, it'll likely break within the pressure of this clamp here. When you're moving the actual clamp, what you're going to want to do, or moving the actual instrument, instead of what some people are going to think to do, and I can try to get a better angle on it here, is if this is attached here, they're going to want to kind of like fan it like that. That's not how you want to measure the leaf. You always want to measure by going perpendicular as possible to that leaf. Now, let's actually turn this thing on, and we'll explore some of the menu structures, and then we'll take some example measurements, and then we'll look at the data. So let me switch my camera over to a different view, and then we'll see if we get a good top-down view of the instrument here. Okay. Here we go. So to power this instrument on, I'm going to press the power button. You'll see it says the version number. It says CID Bioscience. It also said mode leaf there when I powered it up. And right off the bat, there are 4 different menus that you can choose from. Now, without choosing any menu, I can actually activate a measurement, and it'll default to measuring to the last file that I was using by simply lifting the arm. That'll just start activating measurement. However, we want to actually specify what file the measurement's going to, then we're going to need to do some extra steps here. So let's actually do measure last, and I'll show you what all the other menus are first, and then we'll go to the measure menu and we'll do some measurements. So the setup menu is the first menu that is available. So to navigate, we're going to click the down arrow to get to the setup menu. Now, once we're here, we can either click right or enter to access this. This menu is going to contain mostly things that you don't necessarily need to access, and you shouldn't need to access unless you're encountering issues. And so this is something that if you are requesting support, we might ask you to do some stuff that's inside this menu, but in the interest of this training, I just want to show you what options are within this menu. All of this is also described in the user manual. So if I click the right arrow, I can access the setup menu. First, we have the autosave feature. So this actually enables or disables the autosave, which will basically occur after every measurement you've taken. So when you take a measurement, if you want it to just automatically save with no prompt, then what you would want is for autosave to be on. So if I click the right arrow on autosave to navigate further into autosave, right now it's on autosave, yes. And I can switch it to no by clicking the up or down arrows. So yes or no, and then I would click enter to save, but I want to keep it on yes. So I'm going to actually just go back so I can click the left arrow to navigate back to the previous menu. So right kind of navigates in the menus, left navigates you back to the previous menu for most cases here. For the setup measure, here is where you can change different measurement modes. So if you're doing something like roots, you can actually switch it to root measurement mode. For the most part, most people are using this for leaves, and so you can leave it in leaf measurement mode. Setup scanner, this is where you're going to be adjusting things like the threshold, the width, the scan width, things that are calibrated here in-house before this instrument is shipped out. And so this instrument should not require any calibration whatsoever. It should be ready to go right out of the box. If something happens, if damage happens, or you haven't used the instrument in a very long time, you've neglected the instrument, then there is potential that we might have to do recalibration. A lot of it can be done remotely. You won't necessarily have to send the instrument in, but if that is the case, always please contact our support first so that we can help diagnose the problem. But in this setup scanner menu, we have high threshold, low threshold, manual, filter, and adjustment. So these are all things that should not be changed by the user without first discussing it with CID Bioscience. And so I'm not going to actually show you any sort of changes. So if I do this, basically what's happening now is you're waiting for this T to count down, and it's actually calculating out the threshold. And so now, once I've done that, there's actually a keystroke that I would have to do to make sure that that threshold is saved to the instrument parameters. That involves holding down the left and right arrow keys. But because I'm not interested in doing that, I'm going to actually left click here. So that's in the scanner setup. In the storage setup, this is just to ensure that your flash, so this is using flash storage internally for all these parameters, all those threshold parameters. And so really this is just a verification tool for our technicians whenever we get a support case for an instrument like this. And so this is nothing that should be edited by the user. Setup time, this is fully up to you to edit. You can absolutely edit this if you want to. So you can input the time right here. So to exit this menu, you notice left and right just changed. So I'm trying to get out of this menu. You might be like, how do I get out? So I click the stop button right there. I get back out of the menu. SD card setup also should not be accessed by the user. This is actually inaccessible, and you'll notice because we really only set this up at CID Bioscience in our facility here, because there's a lot of potential if we allow user access to this, that there could be corruption that happens in the SD card, which will corrupt the device flash and make it so that we have to kind of reset your whole instrument. So that's not even accessible. No matter how many times I click right, I won't even be able to get into that menu. So that's all the setup options, which you shouldn't really have to access much besides maybe the autosave and the time. As far as view, this is exactly what you would think. This is how you can view measurements on your device. And so you can view files, which is our measure, and there's 2 measurements and another one. So in this one, if I click right, I can actually see all my parameters, my date, time, area length, width, perimeter, ratio, shape factor, and void count. So this is the second measurement of this file. I can also see the first measurement of this file had different area parameters and different voids. So all these parameters, right, only length and width are actually manually measured by this, are actually directly measured by this device. Area is calculated. Perimeter is a calculated parameter. Ratio is also calculated from length over maximum width. The shape factor is a calculation based on the area, and also the void count is just an detection of the number of empty spaces within the leaf. And so when it's measuring with that laser, it's measuring back and forth, what it's actually doing is if it detects that there's a big gap in that leaf, then there's a big hole in it, then that's going to be counted towards as a void. This does not do disease detection. The void counts are not to be confused with disease counting. It's actually for larger holes, not necessarily very small, disease detection. So that's viewing the file. I can exit out with the left arrow back to the viewing the files. This is also where you can view a lot of things that are helpful to our technicians when we're doing troubleshooting. So looking at your voltage, you can view your battery life at 90%, which is good. If you get below, here's a tip, if you get below 30%, make sure you plug back in because once it starts getting below 30%, the battery is going to drain very quickly. So it's using nickel metal hydride batteries, and those can go from being, holding actual 30% capacity charge to being discharged way more rapidly than going to 50 to 30% or something like that. So when they get to their lower battery life, they discharge quickly. So I would recommend 30% or lower. You stop using the device, you plug it in, and you allow it to charge. So I click the left arrow to get back. I can view the flash. I can view the time. I can view the GPS. I can view, which right now we are in a building and we're not gonna really get any GPS lock. And then you can view SD card. So all of these are this is just showing your card size. And this is just viewing. There's really no editing to be done here. So yeah, that's how you would view measurements, and then also a couple of other things that might help with troubleshooting. File, now this is kind of an important step in your workflow. How this instrument stores data is going to use a file structure where we're naming a file. So if I click right, I can, what it requires you to have is a file created in order to take a measurement. You can't just take a measurement with no files created. So you need to have files created in order to actually take measurements. So for instance, there's this default file 00, but I've created ones called tree 00, tree 01, and tree 02. Now, within each of these files, there are a number of measurements. So you can have a lot of measurements within each file. So it's really up to you and planning your study and how you want to organize the data. But the way that this file structure works is that there is basically 2 layers. It's the file name, which is what this is, the tree 01, tree 01, tree 02. And within those files, you can have many, many measurements. So it is completely up to the user and how they want to do this. But what I find easiest to do is before you go into the field that day, before you start, or even the day before, the night before, you just have to go in and create the files that will help you keep your data organized. And so if I know for a fact, for example, I'm going to be measuring two different trees, or just for the sake of this and speed, I'll just do one different tree. So I will go in, I will rename, so I can just highlight whatever letter, and then I use the up and down arrows to access both the numbers and the letters. And so now that we're at tree 03, I'm going to click enter. It says area yes. So here it's basically asking you what parameters you want to include. Always just click enter so that it always just automatically calculates everything. You don't have to use everything if you don't want to, but it's just good practice to allow it to collect all the data that it can. So click enter. And now we're at it's asking us if we want to create it, and we do. So I'm going to click enter again. So now that file's created, I can use it tomorrow or whenever I'm going into the field to use as to collect measurements under. So I know that if I'm going to have 20 different, plants that I'm collecting data from or something like that, I might want to create a file for each of those and then take multiple measurements on each of those plants within each of those files. So this is all under the file menu, right? So we're in the main menu, we go into file, and that's where I just created that. You can open files. So I can open file 3. And so now it's going to default to, tree 3. So now it's going to default to that when I go to measure. I can also from here delete. So if I want to delete certain files, I can do that. You can also clear the measurements out of them, but keep the file. So like say for instance, I don't need these tree 00, these 2 measurements in this file, but I want to keep this file name. If I click right arrow on this, it's going to clear out. So now we have 0 files in tree 00. So the left arrow to go back. So delete, as I mentioned, actually just deletes the file. Clear clears out the measurements within the file. Delete actually takes out the whole file. So from here, the last menu we have is measure. So when you've started up, if you already have your files all situated, everything's looking good, you don't need to do anything else, I would right click on your measure and then make sure on this that your proper file is selected. So you can use the up and down arrows here to make sure that you're measuring under the proper file name. And so from here, what you would do is you would take a measurement. And so so it says here measure arm. What that means is the measurement actually will initiate the once you lift up the arm right here. So I wonder if I can get a good angle from here. What I'll do is quickly lift up the arm. You'll hear the motor. I'm going to insert my leaf. I'm going to pull it through perpendicularly so I don't move the device there. And voila, we have a measurement. And so since I have it on auto save, this measurement's already saved. It's already telling me that we're ready for measurement number 2. If I take a measurement, we'll get measurement number 2. One thing to notice is that when you are measuring, if you pull the actual device along that leaf, if you pull it too quickly, it'll actually give you a warning. It'll actually not save a measurement. It'll actually just say too fast on the device here. So from this measurement screen, I just took a measurement. That's great. I have all these parameters here that I can see visually. All these numbers are stored on the SD card, and I can get them out from the instrument. However, there's a couple of other cool things here. We do have a confirmation image. So this is not an actual image. It's not to be used. It's not an RGB image or anything like that that can be used for image analysis. It is just to confirm that the scan looks like the shape of the leaf. So if you really messed up the scan, then this image would not look like the actual shape of the leaf. And so if I'm comparing what my leaf looks like, I guess I can flip it. Oh, I'll flip it. There we go. That's the right way. So fairly similar to the shape of this leaf. I would probably, be okay with that one. As far as other additional features from this screen, so that was just access with the left, and that was access with the right arrow. There is one more feature here. If I click the right arrow again, I got some barcodes here. And these barcodes you can use an actual barcode reader to import the measurements that this device just took. So you'll get your, area, leaf area, the file names, the leaf area, and those parameters that were just calculated. You'll actually be able to just directly import those with a barcode scanner. Now, if I click left arrow, it takes me right back to the measure menu. It doesn't take me back to those previous screens I just looked at. To get to those, I would have to go back to right view, files, tree 3, and here's those measurements again. And I can still view things like latitude, longitude. Those are the GPS stuff. Still view with the right arrow, still view the image and the barcodes. Left arrow exits back out to this, but I can always go back in and keep cycling through with the right. So left arrow exits out, right arrow just cycles through all of your menus. So if you can keep clicking right, it'll just keep cycling through those 4 screens. So that is essentially how this instrument operates. And so now what I'm going to do is actually show you how I would grab data off of this and show you what the data looks like. And then we'll talk a little bit about support and things like that. So what you need to do first is, depending on which method you're going to use, you'll either want to power the instrument on or leave the instrument on or power it off. I'm going to transfer data via USB. And so for that, I'm going to leave the instrument on. For the SD card, you want to make sure you power your instrument off. So you got to take off the end cap, because there's our USB port. And I'm just going to, because I already have this set up, plug in. Oh, upside down. There we go. So I'm plugged in. And I'm going to switch to screen sharing so that I can show you the data. So give me 1 second. Things out of this. So when I plug this in, I have a USB. It says USB drive G for me. And here are our files. So as you remember, each file contains a bunch of measurements. Here, they're unassociated files. They just display as type file. And here's tree 3 and the previous ones that I have measurements for. What you would do is simply just either right click this and open with some sort of spreadsheet software like Excel, or with most window users, you can just double click it and it'll prompt you to select a program to open it with. These image files are not like JPEGs or anything like that, but they do contain the data necessary for. So if I am opening a file, let's say tree 3, I want to see the data within that. I can just double click. It'll ask me how I want to open the file. I open with Microsoft Excel. It's going to give me a warning because it doesn't recognize the file type, but I want to open it anyway. So I'm just going to open it anyways. And here we have a bunch of data that is comma delimited. And so what that means is right now it's not separated necessarily into its correct columns. So all I need to do is select both of these. This is basically all in one column is what I'm saying. If I just select these, it's really easy to do. Data, text to columns, it's delimited, and it's delimited with commas and spaces. And then I finish, and there's that. This just needs to come over. And there we have the data for the actual device. And so we have the date, the time for this measurement, that measurement that I just took that you saw, I just took it on this device. And so have our length, our width, our perimeter, our ratio, our shape factor, the void count, latitude, longitude, altitude. And then these three parameters here are not necessarily, these are more for troubleshooting. They aren't necessarily for, and for calibration. They're not for actual data collection. So don't need to be concerned with these three. So yeah, that's how you view the data. One thing you never want to do is actually, so this is very important, you never want to, as I just did and to show you, open data directly from your SD card or your USB and then manipulate it and save it. Because if you save a manipulated file back onto this device, it's going to corrupt and cause bugs and issues. So the first step should always be just take everything, copy it, paste it to, say, your documents folder somewhere on your local computer or on a hard drive, and then you can from here access it and do the manipulations and the calculations and all that kind of data actual analysis from here. Don't ever do data analysis directly from the file while it's plugged in to your computer or while the SD card, directly from that SD card. Always save it to your computer, save it locally first, and then from the local files, from here, we can actually do our editing and save the files once we've edited them. So that's how you would access the data. And then when I'm done with this, I can either delete, say for example, I don't need any of this anymore. I could just delete it all from the SD card. And then have a completely free and clear memory to take further measurements. You can leave it all there. You can, leave it alone. And then if you need to just keep going, you can just simply, eject the instrument and then be on your way. So what I want to show next actually is how to kind of access support for the device and just to get general information about it. I'm going to switch my camera over now back to myself. So we're kind of done with showing the instrument. So this is our new website, in case you guys haven't been on here yet to see. It's a little bit easier to navigate than our previous website. So simply go to products and then CI-203. From here, there's a number of things you can do. You can get a quote. You can, from this bar, you can look at specifications, the theory of operation, videos, the brochure, look at the accessories, look at the product support. As far as like getting a consultation, if you, you can look at all this information, you can get consultation from us. You can get published research papers, a compilation, the live demo consultation. There's a whole bunch you can do from this product page. There's also frequently asked questions at the bottom here. For example, is it CI-203 waterproof? The answer is no, it is not. So please do not submerge your device in water. But yeah, so there's some great resources here, more chances to schedule consultations, to request quotes. As far as getting support goes, you can actually just click this product support at the top of the page there and make sure CI-203 handheld laser leaf area meter is selected. Here is where you can download the manual. And so the manual has a lot of very good and useful tips and information. There's also a technical questions PDF. And so if you do have questions, there might be some frequently asked questions on this that might pertain to you regarding stabilization, things like that. And then as far as getting a support ticket created, so that was where manuals were. Submit a ticket is right here. So if you actually need further support that you can't diagnose yourself, or that you don't feel comfortable diagnosing yourself, please feel free to just send us a support ticket and we'll reach out to you right away, let you know that we got your ticket and that we are actively working on your case. Now, before we kind of wrap this up, I just wanted to talk about some general care of the device, things like that. As I just mentioned, the device is not waterproof. Please do not submerge it in water. Do not use it in downpour rain conditions. If you are in some rain, make sure you're wiping it dry. Make sure you're especially wiping, not getting water down in the roller of the device or anything like that. Make sure that that actual scan window, that kind of clear-ish, I'm holding it backwards here, that kind of clear-ish area where the actual lasers is coming through. Make sure that's clear of debris. Make sure the roller is clear of debris. Use the lens cloth to actually do the wiping down to make sure that scan window is clear. If it's dirty and it hasn't been cleaned, there's no amount of calibrating or thresholding that is going to adjust for that or fix that problem. So make sure that you're keeping your instrument in good working condition. Store it in your case that you get it in. If you need to clean out the roller, you can actually pop the roller out fairly easily and wipe that down. Again, do not use any sort of caustic cleaning chemicals. For the exterior only, you can use a mild detergent. Never use water detergent on the internal components underneath this arm to clean. If your instrument has fallen out of disrepair from neglect or whatever it may be, from an accident or anything, please feel free to just send in a support ticket and let us know, and we can discuss what we can do to help get that back and operational for you. So that is the 203 in a nutshell. It's one of our most straightforward instruments that we have here. It's pretty foolproof, and it's a great tool to use out in the field. People using it it's very useful on blade leaf plants, because it is able to capture that very long length as opposed to the other styles of leaf area meters. This can get that really long leaf length, like in maize and other blade leaf crops or plants. In general, just a great, easy and portable device to get those non-destructive measurements. There is the option, as I mentioned, to use the conveyor attachment. That's what that connection is on the scan side that I already showed you. How that essentially works is it is a destructive but high throughput method. Essentially, you have this large roller device where you are actually inserting the instrument into here, and it will connect with this with a power supply, and you'll just feed leaves into the top, and it will rapidly read them as it rolls the leaves through the scan head. That's a completely separate, it doesn't come with the device, it's a separate attachment. And as I mentioned, it's only for if you are already doing destructive measurements, you have already harvested a bunch of leaves, and you just need to measure all of them in really, in a high throughput kind of way. So that is an option as an accessory. So just to kind of wrap things up here, let me pull my PowerPoint back up, and I will reshare the PowerPoint here. So those are, I just kind of covered everything that we said we would cover about the instrument. If you do need additional support, you can always, as I mentioned, create a support ticket. If you are interested in this device, you can also request a quote. So this link, this tiny URL link, will be in the chat, and you can use that to request a quote for the device. If you want, you can always follow us on social media. We are, or on our website. So we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter. If you need to get in contact with us, you can contact us via phone or email. Yeah, thank you so much all for joining us. What we're going to do is move on to the Q&A, and then we will end this live training. And if you have questions that are more applicable to your specific device, you can always contact us directly after this, via email, so that we can address your specific problems. So the first question in our Q&A, I just pulled up here from an anonymous attendee, is it more leaf surface area and high chlorophyll content in leaf can contribute additional soil organic carbon? I'm not sure if I completely understand this question. This device only measures leaf area. So, I mean, it also measures other parameters, as I mentioned, like length, width, perimeter, shape factor, and ratio and void count, but does not do anything with chlorophyll content. We have other devices if you're interested in measuring chlorophyll content. If you're asking if leaf surface area is correlated to chlorophyll content in the leaf, and then there might be something there. I don't know if that is what you're asking though. So if you have a specific question, if you could please email me directly so I can get a clear vision of what you're actually asking, then that would be appreciated. Thank you. The next question is, please will you share the recording? And absolutely, McDonald, we will be sharing this once we process it, get the recording from Zoom, and have get some editing done to it. Then we'll make sure that we get this sent out to everyone that signed up for the live training, and then we'll also be putting it up on the website, I imagine. The next question is, can you measure the LAI of tomato plants? You can measure the LAI of anything, as I mentioned. Well, anything is a stretch. You can, there is a certain limit to the thickness of the leaves that you can measure. So if you're trying to measure something like agave or something like that, then you're going to run into limitations with how thick the leaves are. There is the ability, though, as I mentioned earlier, to put this into root mode. And so even if you have if you want to include vines in the actual measurement, this has no problem. There's no kind of, the limiting, I guess, factor of this is the kind of the thickness of the leaf, really, because all it's doing is it's going to measure whatever. I mean, I could put a piece of paper through here and measure the the length of a piece of paper. That's actually a good calibration exercise, is to look at a predetermined pre-measured length of something or width of something. But yeah, you could absolutely measure the weight, or the LAI of the tomato plants. The reason I just mentioned weight is because the next question is, how heavy is the equipment? It is ergonomically easy to handle. It's not very heavy. It's a little less than a kilogram, so about 900 and some grams is the weight. So really very easy to handle, easy to bring out in the field. As I mentioned, it does have that carrying strap. So we do have this like strap that you can actually hook to carry it out in the field, so you don't have to just like carry it in your hand the whole time. So there is that as well to help ease the burden. The next question, is it versatile enough to measure aggregate root area? So I wouldn't, no, I wouldn't use it for that purpose. I would, if you're interested in other root area measurements though, especially aggregate root areas, I would very highly encourage you to look at our root measurement systems that we have available on our website. So please take a visit to our website and check out our CI-600, our CI-602, and we can maybe see if those might be be more applicable to your specific use. And it looks as though there are no more questions, open questions on the Q&A at least. And so if you do, like I mentioned, if you do have a question that you forgot to ask right now and it comes to you later, feel free to send an email. If you already own an instrument and you are wondering something specific about the instrument, if you have a concern about it or anything like that, also feel free to submit a support ticket so you can get in contact with us and we can get that figured out for you. If you are interested in this device and you don't have one yet, please just send us some, click on that tiny URL, request a quote. We'll send you a bunch more information on it. And feel free to ask us any other questions you might have before you purchase. This is a great device, very reliable, been used by a lot of people before. So there's lots of precedent for it being used out there. So yeah, so thank you everyone so much for being on this live training, and we will see you at the next one.